Here are 6 of the most horrifying mythical creatures you've probably never heard of. And hopefully, you never will, at least not in person, alone in the dead of night. Look, you've heard of vampires and werewolves, maybe even some Japanese yokai if you're into that sort of thing. But those creatures? Child's play compared to what we're about to discuss. I'm talking about a flying head that hunts pregnant women with its intestines dangling behind it like some kind of organic helicopter. A woman who will literally ask if she's pretty, and depending on your answer, will either let you live or turn your face into a permanent smile. And a witch who murdered their own sibling to gain the power to shapeshift into animals and read your mind. These aren't creatures Hollywood made up to sell movie tickets. These are legends that entire cultures genuinely believed in. Some still do. And here's the disturbing part. A lot of these stories have rules. Ways to protect yourself, ways to kill them. Which makes you wonder, why would people need such specific instructions if these things never existed in the first place? Don't say I didn't warn you, because I just did. Let's start with a Japanese urban legend that caused genuine mass hysteria in the 1970s. Kuchisake Onna translates to slit-mouthed woman, and if you were a kid in Japan during the late 1970s, this legend absolutely terrorized your childhood. Here's how it works. You're walking home at night when you see a beautiful woman standing under a streetlight. She's wearing a surgical mask, which in Japan is completely normal. People wear them for allergies, colds, pollution, whatever. She approaches you with a simple question. Am I pretty? Now you're probably thinking, sure, just say yes and walk away. Wrong. So very wrong. You say yes, she removes the mask, and her mouth is sliced open from ear to ear in a grotesque, permanent smile. Blood-stained teeth exposed. Scar tissue pulling at the edges. Then she asks again, leaning closer, how about now? If you say no, she kills you immediately with the scissors she's been hiding. Quick, brutal, efficient. But if you say yes, she takes out those scissors and makes you like her. Cuts your mouth open ear to ear so you can match. There is no winning here. It's a riddle where every answer ends in violence. The origin story is genuinely tragic. Centuries ago, she was the beautiful wife of a samurai. Depending on who tells the story, she was either unfaithful or falsely accused of it. Her husband, consumed by rage and jealousy, took his sword and mutilated her face, snarling, "Who will think you're pretty now?" She died from the wounds and came back as a vengeful spirit, forever asking that same question to anyone unlucky enough to cross her path. Now, there are ways to escape. And honestly, they're almost comedic. You can give her an ambiguous answer like, you're average, or so-so, which apparently short-circuits her ghost brain long enough for you to run. You can throw candy at her, she gets distracted like a toddler. Or my personal favorite, you can just say, I have an appointment, and leave. Apparently Japanese ghosts respect scheduling conflicts. But here's what makes this different from other folklore. In 1979, sightings of Kuchisake Onna spread so rapidly across Japan that it caused genuine panic. Schools sent children home in groups. Police increased nighttime patrols. Parents were genuinely terrified, all because of a woman in a surgical mask asking if she's pretty. The legend spread worldwide and has inspired countless horror films, manga, and video games. She's become Japan's most exported nightmare. But at least you can confuse her with weird answers. The next creature on our list? Not so easily fooled. The penanggalan comes from Malaysia and Indonesia, and it might be the single most disgusting thing we discuss today. During the day, she appears completely normal. Could be your neighbor. Could be the woman who sells you fruit at the market. You'd never suspect anything. But when night falls, her head detaches from her body at the neck, and all of her internal organs come with it. I'm talking stomach, intestines, lungs, liver, everything just hanging there below her floating head like nightmare party streamers. Then she sprouts bat wings and flies off to hunt. And what does she hunt? Pregnant women and newborn babies primarily. She uses her unnaturally long tongue to drink blood and consume placentas. You wanted me to illustrate that? Absolutely not. Here's a picture of a corgi instead. You've earned it after that mental image. The origin story is actually kind of sad. According to legend, she was a woman practicing meditation and dark magic rituals to gain power or beauty, depending on the version you hear. Someone burst in and startled her during a critical moment. The shock was so intense, so fundamentally wrong, that her head literally tore away from her body, cursed to hunt like this forever. The punishment doesn't fit the crime, honestly. Oh, you were meditating? Eternal damnation for you. But here's the design flaw that proves even supernatural curses have bugs that need patching. While her head is out hunting, her body is just standing there, somewhere, waiting, probably very confused. Those dangling organs expand during the night as they fill with blood. So before sunrise, she has to find barrels of vinegar to soak them in, shrinking them back down so they'll fit back inside her body. If she can't reunite with her lower half before dawn, she dies. The traditional protection is beautifully simple: thorny plants. Cover your windows, doors, any opening with thorny branches. The organs get tangled and caught, trapping her until the sun finishes the job. Despite Malaysia modernizing rapidly, people in rural areas still report seeing strange lights flying through the night, trailing something behind them. They close their windows, check their thorn barriers, and wait for morning. Think dangling intestines are disturbing? The Philippines has two creatures that somehow make this look tame. The manananggal is from the Philippines, and its name literally means one who separates itself. Take one guess what it separates. First two don't count. By day, she looks like an older woman, maybe a bit haggard, kind of disfigured, but nothing that screams torso-detaching nightmare monster. Just someone you'd nod at politely if you passed on the street. At night, her upper body splits from her waist. Entrails hanging out everywhere like the world's worst anatomical diagram come to life. She sprouts massive bat wings and launches into the darkness. Her target demographic is very specific: pregnant women, newborns, newlyweds, lovers, and men who were abandoned before marriage. She's got a whole list, honestly. Very organized for a flying torso. She uses a long proboscis-like tongue, think mosquito, but horrifying, to suck blood from sleeping victims. But here's where it gets worse, and I'm sorry to tell you this. She specifically targets pregnant women to extract their unborn children. Did you think I was going to draw that scene? Not a chance. Here's a golden retriever puppy. Look at its face. Focus on that instead. While hunting, the manananggal makes a distinctive tick-tick-tick sound. And this is psychologically brilliant. The farther away the ticking sounds, the closer she actually is. It's reverse audio tracking designed to make victims think they're safe when they're absolutely not. Oh good, that ticking is way over there, I'm fine. Nope. She's hovering right above you. The absolutely hilarious weakness in this entire cursed existence is that her lower half just stands there while she's hunting. Her legs, her butt, just waiting in a corner somewhere for the top half to come home. And that's how you kill her. Find the lower half, prevent them from reuniting before sunrise, and she's done. Traditional methods include burning it, covering it in salt, ash, or garlic. Basically, throw anything at the butt that would work on a vampire. People in the Visayan regions of the Philippines still report hearing that ticking sound at night. They stay inside, lock their doors, and pray they don't hear it getting quieter. Before we continue and dive into an even worse Filipino nightmare, I'd like to ask for your help. I'm working to grow this channel and bring you more deep dives into folklore and mythology from around the world. If you're enjoying this video, hit that subscribe button. These creatures aren't going to promote themselves. Your support means everything. Okay, let's continue, because here's the thing about Filipino folklore. The manananggal, that's just one type of monster. The next one is an entire category of nightmare. The aswang is the most feared creature in all of Filipino folklore. And here's the fun part. Aswang isn't one monster. It's an umbrella term. It's like saying fast food. Could be a burger, could be tacos, could be something that violates health codes. You just don't know until it's too late. An aswang can be a vampire, a viscera sucker, a witch, a ghoul that eats corpses from cemeteries, or a shapeshifter that transforms into dogs, pigs, or bats. It's basically a supernatural Swiss Army knife of horror. During the day, they look completely normal. Your neighbor, your coworker, that friendly person at church, totally ordinary. But there are signs if you know what to look for. Bloodshot eyes. When you look into their eyes, you see no reflection. Like staring into a black mirror. They avoid garlic, salt, and religious objects. And my personal favorite, in moonlight, their shadow has no head. That last one feels like whoever wrote these rules just threw it in for style points. But here's where aswangs get truly messed up. They can replace sick people with replicas made of sticks, leaves, and magic. The family thinks their loved one is slowly recovering. They're not. The real person was taken and devoured. The stick version dies a few days later, and no one knows what actually happened. Some aswang variants have a thin, whip-like tail they use to inject black chicks, basically disease carriers, into victims. It's like a supernatural syringe of pestilence. Different Philippine provinces have different versions. Some can remove their shadow and send it out scouting. Some can perfectly mimic voices. Some can smell fear from miles away. It's like they had a meeting and decided, let's just make this thing capable of every horrible thing we can imagine. Protection methods include the usual: garlic, salt, holy water, but also stingray tails. Apparently, aswangs hate stingrays. Someone also discovered ginger works, which honestly seems the most practical option. The aswang appears in more documented folklore than any other Filipino creature. Films, TV shows, horror stories. Parents still use it to make misbehaving children act right. But those creatures, as terrifying as they are, stay in the Philippines. What if I told you the next one could be your neighbor, your friend, even your family member? And you'd never know until it was too late. Before we go any further, I need to be very clear about something. The skinwalker comes from Navajo culture in the southwestern United States. And unlike the other creatures on this list, many Navajo people don't consider this folklore or legend. They believe these things are genuinely real, not spooky campfire story, real. Real. Don't even speak the name because you might attract one. Real. So we're handling this with respect, or at least as much respect as you can while discussing something that requires murdering your own sibling to gain magical powers. In Navajo tradition, there are medicine men, healers who use knowledge of both good and evil magic to protect their community, treat the sick, ward off dark forces. And then there are witches, the exact opposite, the shadow reflection of everything good. These witches use their knowledge specifically to harm people. They craft weapons from human bones, make poisons and curses from body parts, use corpses to fuel their dark magic. It's like Etsy, but for cursed objects. But to become a true skinwalker, to gain shape-shifting abilities, there's an entrance requirement that's absolutely unforgivable. You must kill a close blood relative, preferably a sibling. Yeah, that's the price of admission. Once you've crossed that line, and honestly, if you've gotten this far, redemption isn't on the table anymore. You gain the ability to transform into any animal, usually predatory ones like wolves, coyotes, bears. But technically, any creature works. When they're in human form, they wear the pelt of whatever animal they transform into. And their eyes? They look like animal eyes. Wrong. Unsettling. But when they're in animal form, their eyes look human. So if you're hiking in the desert and see a coyote staring at you with distinctly human eyes showing far too much intelligence, congratulations. You found a skinwalker. Run. By day, these witches walk among their communities completely undetected. By night, they transform. They cause mysterious illnesses, unexplained deaths, livestock mutilations. They can read minds, control people, and make them do terrible things. Many Navajo people won't even discuss skinwalkers. Speaking about them is believed to attract their attention, like saying their name sends out a signal. So, apologies to everyone watching this in New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, or Colorado. That's on me, and if you thought mind-reading shapeshifters were bad, our final creature makes everything we've discussed look like a petting zoo. What we're about to discuss is pure, concentrated evil. The Knuckle of V comes from Scotland's Orkney Islands, and it is, without any exaggeration, the most horrifying creature in existence. There is nothing redeemable about it. No tragic backstory, no maybe it's misunderstood angle, no sympathetic origin tale. It exists purely, exclusively to cause suffering and destruction. Its malevolence given physical form. Picture this nightmare. A man's torso fused directly onto a horse's back, not riding it, fused, merged. The man has no legs. He's just part of the horse now, grown into its spine like a tumor. His arms are grotesquely long, reaching all the way to the ground. His head is 3 feet in diameter, just an enormous head sitting on those shoulders. Now here's the part that pushes it into true horror. The knuckle of V has no skin. Not on the man, not on the horse, none. Zero. Just exposed muscles, tendons, and internal organs. Black blood pulsing visibly through bright yellow veins across every inch of the body. You can see everything working, every muscle fiber contracting, every vessel pumping. The horse's head has one massive mouth that breathes toxic vapors and one single red eye that burns like flame. Its breath alone wilts crops, sickens livestock, causes epidemics and plagues. Just being near this thing is a death sentence for everything around it. In 1722, the people of Orkney started burning seaweed for industrial purposes, making soap, glass, improving soil, normal farming activities. The pungent smoke enraged the knuckle of V so completely that it went on a rampage across every island. Crops destroyed, cattle dead, horses dropping in fields, plagues spreading like wildfire. This skinless abomination went on a tour of apocalyptic destruction because people were making soap. It has exactly one weakness, and it's almost comedic. Freshwater. The knuckle of V cannot cross even a small stream, so if this thing is chasing you, just hop over a creek and you're safe. A man named Tammy once encountered one and lived to give a detailed description. His account matches everything I just told you. The details are so specific, so vivid, so consistent that it's been passed down for centuries. The knuckle of V has no redemption arc, no way to bargain with it, no method to defeat it beyond avoiding it. It's just concentrated, weaponized evil given a body. And on that cheerful note, sweet dreams. 6 creatures, 6 different cultures, 6 unique nightmares. A woman who will compliment you to death, flying heads with internal organs as propellers, torsos that separate and hunt at night, shape-shifting monsters that could be anyone, a witch who reads minds and murdered their own family, and a skinless demon that exists only to destroy. These aren't just stories, they're warnings passed down through generations. Explanations for the unexplainable, ways to understand death, disease, and the darkness we can't control. Every culture creates monsters, but they all share common fears. Losing children, illness, things that hunt in darkness, threats we can't see coming. Which of these creatures disturbed you most? Why? Let me know in the comments. Before you go to sleep tonight, maybe check your windows. Listen for any ticking sounds. And if someone asks if they're pretty while wearing a surgical mask, just run. Some questions aren't worth answering. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more nightmare fuel. Sleep tight, if you can. In 1997, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration was monitoring the Pacific Ocean with underwater microphones when they picked up something that shouldn't exist. An ultra-low frequency sound, extremely loud, detected from over 3,000 miles away. They called it the bloop. Here's why that's terrifying. The blue whale is the loudest animal on Earth. Its call can be heard from about 1,000 miles away. Impressive, right? The bloop was detected from 3 times that distance, which means whatever made it was significantly larger than the largest animal we know exists. The sound pattern was consistent with a living creature. Not geological, not mechanical, biological. Something was down there, and it was absolutely massive. NOAA later said it was probably an iceberg calving, a huge chunk of ice breaking off an ice shelf. Case closed, mystery solved, everyone go home. Except a lot of scientists aren't buying it. The acoustic signature doesn't quite match. And more importantly, the bloop has never been heard again, not once in 28 years of continuous monitoring. If it was ice, it should happen regularly. Ice shelves break constantly, but this specific sound, one time, then silence. So what else could it be? A giant unknown cephalopod, a massive deep-sea creature we've never documented, or possibly something prehistoric that we thought went extinct millions of years ago. Remember, we didn't get footage of a living giant squid until 2004. The colossal squid wasn't found until 2007. These are animals longer than a bus, and we had no proof they existed until this century. The Mariana Trench is deeper than Mount Everest is tall. We've sent 12 people to the moon. We've sent 3 people to the bottom of that trench. 3. In all of human history, 95% of the ocean is completely unexplored. There are mountain ranges down there we've never seen, canyons that could swallow cities, and pressure so intense that most of our equipment just implodes. If something wanted to hide in the deep ocean, it's the perfect place. Unlimited food from whale falls and deep sea life. No natural predators. Total darkness. And we'd never, ever find it. The bloop was heard once. Then whatever made it disappeared back into the abyss. At least that thing stays in the ocean. The next creature? Indigenous people in the Amazon say it's still walking through the rainforest, and the footprints they've photographed don't match any known animal. Indigenous tribes across the Amazon have been telling the same story for centuries. There's something in the deep jungle. Something massive. 7 feet tall, covered in thick reddish fur, with an unbearable stench that announces its presence long before you see it. They call it the Mapinguari, and here's the disturbing part. Their descriptions match an animal that science says went extinct 10,000 years ago. The giant ground sloth, Megatherium, stood 12 feet tall on its hind legs, weighed 4 tons, had massive claws that could pull down entire trees, thick matted fur, and a musky odor so strong it could clear an area. Now, normally you'd dismiss this as folklore. Ancient stories passed down, exaggerated over time. Except the details are way too specific. The Mapinguari supposedly has backwards-facing feet. Weird detail, right? Except ground sloths walked on the sides of their feet because of their claw structure. From behind, their tracks would look backwards. The mouth on its belly, that legend describes. When a ground sloth reared up on its hind legs to defend itself, the anatomy of its throat and chest could create that exact illusion. The tree damage that hunters report? Ground sloths pulled down trees to eat the leaves. That was their thing. And the smell? Modern sloths have a strong, musky odor. A giant version would be unbearable. But here's what makes this genuinely interesting. In the 1990s, ornithologist David Oren went to the Amazon specifically to investigate these reports. He collected hair samples, found massive claw marks on trees that didn't match any known animal, and recorded dozens of eyewitness accounts from different tribes who'd never communicated with each other, all describing the same creature. In 2007, footprints were photographed in Acre, Brazil. 3 toes. Massive. Ground sloths had 3 weight-bearing toes. The Amazon rainforest is 2.1 million square miles. 80% of it has never been studied by scientists. New species are discovered constantly. In the 1970s, they found a species of peccary that was thought to be extinct for centuries, just walking around. Nobody had bothered to look properly. If you're a giant herbivore with no natural predators and the entire Amazon to hide in, you could survive indefinitely in small populations. The jungle. Floods regularly, washing away evidence. The canopy is so thick that satellite imagery is useless. And the indigenous people? They're not telling stories. They're reporting sightings. There's a difference. The ground sloth might not be as extinct as we think, but at least that's just a big herbivore. The next creature? People in the Congo insist there's an actual living dinosaur, and the evidence is deeply uncomfortable. In 1932, a Swedish plantation owner named John Johnson was deep in the Congo jungle when he saw something that shouldn't exist. A massive reptile. 40 feet long, standing on its hind legs, reddish coloring with black stripes, and according to his account, it attacked and killed a rhinoceros right in front of him. He claimed he took photographs. Those photos have never surfaced. His story was published in a magazine, met with immediate skepticism, and largely dismissed as a hoax. Case closed, except for one problem. The locals had been describing this exact creature for centuries, long before anyone in the Congo had ever seen a picture of a dinosaur. They call it Mokele Mbembe, the one who stops the flow of rivers. And the descriptions are unnervingly consistent across different tribes, different regions, different time periods. Long neck, massive body, lives in deep swamps. Vegetarian but extremely aggressive. Attacks canoes. Size of an elephant at minimum, possibly much larger. In the early 1900s, German explorer Karl Hagenbeck collected reports from multiple sources. Pygmy tribes described an animal that perfectly matched a sauropod dinosaur. They drew pictures of it. When shown illustrations of various animals, they consistently pointed to the sauropod and said, "That one, that lives here." Roy Mackal, a biologist from the University of Chicago, led expeditions to the Congo in the 1980s. He didn't find the creature, but he found something almost as interesting. Absolutely consistent testimony from people who had never met each other, describing the same animal in the same locations. In 1987, an expedition used sonar equipment on Lake Tili. They detected a large, moving object underwater that didn't match any known animal in the region. They couldn't identify it. Now, is there actually a living dinosaur in the Congo? Almost certainly not. Dinosaurs would need a breeding population, which means dozens of animals minimum. That's hard to hide. But here's what makes this interesting. The Congo Basin is virtually unexplored. It's the second largest rainforest on Earth. Dense swamps, impenetrable jungle, areas where no scientist has ever been. And the people who live there, who've lived there for thousands of years, insist something is in those swamps. Something large, something reptilian. Could it be an unknown species of large monitor lizard? A massive crocodilian we haven't documented? Some kind of surviving prehistoric reptile that isn't technically a dinosaur but close enough? The coelacanths survived for 66 million years in the deep ocean. The Congo has swamps deep enough and isolated enough to hide something for just as long. Before we continue with 3 more extinct predators that might still be out there, including an Irish lake monster with actual DNA evidence, an Egyptian death deity that left physical proof, and a French beast that definitely killed hundreds of people. I need your help. If you're enjoying this deep dive into cryptozoology and species we thought were gone, hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps fund the research for these videos. Your support means everything. Okay, let's continue. Because the next creature has something the others don't. Bodies, DNA samples, physical evidence. We just can't identify what animal it came from. In Irish and Scottish folklore, there's a creature called the Dóthairtú, the water hound, described as the size of a large crocodile with smooth dark fur and a distinctive white marking on its chest. Sounds like typical lake monster stories, right? Except this one has a gravestone. In 1722, a woman named Grace Connolly was killed by one. The attack was documented. Her husband hunted down the creature and killed it. Its mate chased him for miles. Both creatures were eventually killed. This isn't legend, this is recorded history. You can visit Grace Connolly's grave right now in Conwall Cemetery, Ireland. The headstone is still there. The inscription describes her death by Dóthairtú. There's even a carving of the creature on the stone. It looks like a massive otter seal hybrid. That was nearly 300 years ago, but sightings never stopped. In 2003, an artist named Sean Corcoran was walking along Omi Island when he saw something on the beach. He described it as the size of a large dog. Otter-like features, but massive. Dark fur with a white cross-shaped marking on the chest. The exact same marking described in the 1722 account. And then there's the DNA mystery. In the early 2000s, a carcass washed up on an Irish beach. No one could identify what species it was. It was sent for DNA analysis. The results came back as otter-like but unknown species. The DNA didn't match anything in the database. Then the sample was lost in the lab. Just gone. No follow-up was ever possible. So what is it? The most likely explanation is an unknown subspecies of giant otter. European otters max out at about 3 feet. This would be 6 feet or more. Isolated populations can evolve differently, especially on islands. But there's another possibility that nobody wants to say out loud. Megalenhydrus was a species of giant otter that went extinct 2 million years ago. It grew over 7 feet long. It was predatory and aggressive, and it lived in exactly the kind of habitat that Ireland has. Deep, interconnected lakes, underwater cave systems, access to the ocean through rivers. Ireland's lakes are deep. Some have never been fully explored. The underwater cave networks are extensive. If a small population of something wanted to hide, it's got everything it needs. Plenty of fish, low human presence in remote areas, mostly nocturnal hunting. We have gravestone evidence from 1722, multiple consistent sightings across centuries. an unidentified DNA sample, and an artist's sketch that matches the folklore description perfectly. The Dobarchu is either an undiscovered species of giant otter or something that was supposed to go extinct 2 million years ago. Either option is unsettling. Ireland has lake monsters with physical evidence, but Egypt has something worse. A creature that was documented eating human hearts, and we found the mummies to prove it happened. Ancient Egyptian mythology describes Ammit as the devourer of the dead, not a god, a demon, part crocodile, part leopard, part hippopotamus. The front was a crocodile head. The middle was a leopard's torso. The back was hippopotamus hindquarters. According to legend, after you died, your heart was weighed against the feather of Mot, representing truth and justice. If your heart was heavier with sins, Ammit would devour it. Your soul would cease to exist. No afterlife, no reincarnation, complete obliteration. It was the worst possible fate in Egyptian belief, worse than any hell. And here's the thing, Ammit wasn't just mythology. The Egyptians tried to make it real. In the 1920s and 1940s, excavations in the Fayum Depression uncovered evidence of large enclosed pools. These pools contained a mix of crocodile and hippopotamus remains, together, in a ritual context. The Egyptians kept these animals, the 3 most dangerous predators on the Nile, in the same locations deliberately. They were attempting to create their death deity physically. Royal menageries had extensive collections. Evidence shows they experimented with animal combinations, not just for study, for religious and political power. If you could create a god in physical form, you controlled divine authority. But there's more disturbing evidence. Egyptian mummies were traditionally buried with their hearts intact. The heart was essential for the judgment ceremony in the afterlife. But some mummies have been found with their hearts surgically removed, not for medical study. This was done in antiquity as part of the burial ritual. The hearts were eaten in ceremony. And then there are the sacred crocodile mummies. Crocodiles were revered, mummified, and buried in massive numbers. Some of these crocodile mummies have been found with human tissue in their stomachs. Not accidental, ritual feeding. They were creating Ammit through actual crocodiles. Now, could a natural hybrid of crocodile, leopard, and hippo exist? Number. Biology doesn't work that way, but the Egyptians weren't trying to breed one naturally. They were using ritual, symbolism, and actual animal sacrifice to manifest their death deity in physical form. The largest Nile crocodiles can reach over 20 feet. Hippopotamuses kill more than 500 people per year in Africa, even today. Leopards are perfect ambush predators. Combine the attributes of all 3, even symbolically, and you have Ammit. We found the ritual pools, the mixed remains, the crocodile mummies with human tissue, the bodies with missing hearts. The Egyptians didn't just believe in Ammit, they tried to create it, and in a way, through their sacred crocodiles and ritual practices, they succeeded. Egypt tried to manufacture their death monster, but France had one that occurred naturally. It killed over 100 people. 3 hunters finally took it down, and we still have no idea what species it was. Between 1764 and 1767, something terrorized the Gévaudan region of southern France. It killed between 100 and 300 people, mostly women and children. The attacks were documented by authorities. Bodies were examined by doctors. This wasn't folklore. This was a 3-year reign of terror with official records, and we still don't know what it was. The attack pattern was unusual. It targeted throats and heads specifically. It partially ate some victims. Sometimes it drank blood but left the rest of the body intact. It hunted in broad daylight. It wasn't afraid of groups. It ignored livestock and preferred humans. That's not normal wolf behavior at all. Witness descriptions were remarkably consistent across hundreds of accounts, larger than a normal wolf. Reddish-brown fur with a black stripe down the back, extremely broad chest, massive teeth, tail thicker than a wolf's. Some said it had a lion-like face. King Louis XV got personally involved. He sent royal huntsmen. They organized massive hunts across the region. They killed dozens of large wolves. The attacks continued. Whatever this thing was, it was smart enough to avoid professional hunters. On June 19, 1767, a local hunter named Jean Chastella shot and killed a creature that matched the descriptions. It weighed 140 pounds, enormous for a wolf. He'd used bullets blessed by a priest. Some accounts say they were silver bullets. The attack stopped immediately after that kill. The body was preserved and sent to King Louis XV. It disappeared before scientists could properly examine it. No remains exist today. We only have drawings. So what was it? Theory 1. An abnormally large wolf, possibly rabid, that learned humans were easy prey. But wolves don't typically reach 140 pounds, and rabid animals don't hunt strategically for 3 years. Theory 2. A striped hyena that escaped from a royal menagerie. The description matches perfectly. Hyenas have that lion-like face. They're significantly larger than wolves. Their behavior toward humans is more aggressive, but no one reported a missing hyena, and they're not native to France. Theory 3. A dog-wolf hybrid trained as an attack animal. This would explain the human targeting. Someone was controlling it. When Chastel killed the animal, maybe the owner died or fled. That's why the attacks stopped. Theory 4, and this is the wildest. Amphitryon, the bear dog, went extinct 2 million years ago. But the size matches. The behavior fits. The jaw structure, based on the bite patterns doctors documented, didn't quite match a wolf. In 2016, researchers analyzed the historical records. They concluded it might have been a Caucasian shepherd dog, a massive and aggressive breed. But that doesn't explain everything. Why target humans exclusively? How did it avoid trained hunters? Why did the attacks stop completely after one kill? DNA was extracted from museum specimens of wolves killed during the hunts. Results: Canid species unclear. The beast of Gévaudan existed. That's not debatable. It killed hundreds of people. It was killed by a hunter in 1767. We just don't know what it was. And maybe that's the most terrifying answer of all. 6 extinct predators. Or maybe they're not. Something massive made the bloop in the deepest parts of the ocean. Indigenous tribes keep reporting the Mapinguari with footprints that match extinct ground sloths. The Congo has consistent descriptions of something large and reptilian in unexplored swamps. Ireland found DNA from an unknown otter species that later disappeared. Egypt tried to physically create their death deity through ritual and crocodiles. And France's beast definitely existed, killed hundreds, and we still can't identify it. Extinct just means we haven't found a living one yet. The coelacanth proved that. The giant squid proved that. 95% of the ocean is unexplored. Most of the Amazon is impenetrable. The Congo is virtually untouched. The question isn't, are they out there? It's, what else haven't we found? Which creature do you think has the best chance of still existing? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more cryptozoology and extinct species investigations. And maybe think twice before swimming in deep water. What if I told you that some of the world's most terrifying legends weren't just made up to scare children? What if they were based on real events, real diseases, and real people that nobody could explain at the time? Today, we're looking at 6 legendary creatures that cultures around the world swore were real. And here's the twist, they were kind of right. We've got floating heads explained by actual medical conditions and glowing bacteria. A cannibalistic monster that was actually a documented psychological disorder with court cases. A weeping ghost based on a real historical figure whose tragedy was so massive it echoed for 500 years. A headless horseman inspired by Celtic execution rituals that archaeologists keep finding evidence of. And my personal favorite, undead Viking warriors that Norse people feared so much, they staked bodies into the ground. We found hundreds of these vampire burials. They weren't being paranoid, they were genuinely terrified. These stories weren't just entertainment, they were attempts to explain diseases, madness, decomposition, and tragedies that people had no framework to understand. Sometimes the monsters were real, we just didn't have the science to recognize them yet. Let's start with a creature from Southeast Asia that has one of the most disturbing real-world explanations on this entire list. The Krashui appears in folklore across Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. And it is exactly as disturbing as it sounds. The legend describes a floating female head with all of her internal organs hanging down below like the world's worst chandelier. The head glows with an eerie green or blue light as it flies through the night, hunting for blood and raw meat. During the day, she appears as a normal woman, but at night her head detaches and goes hunting, leaving her body hidden somewhere safe. She enters homes through windows, attacks sleeping victims, and particularly targets pregnant women. Different countries have different names for her. Krasue in Thailand, AHP in Cambodia, Kasu in Laos, but the description stays remarkably consistent across the region, and people still actively believe in this. Like present day, protective rituals are common in rural areas. This isn't ancient history. The Wendigo comes from Algonquin tribes across Canada and the northern United States. And before we go further, I need to be clear. This isn't just folklore to many indigenous peoples. It's a real part of living culture and taken very seriously. So we're handling this respectfully, or as respectfully as you can, while discussing a documented psychological condition that made people believe they were transforming into cannibalistic monsters. The legend describes a gaunt, skeletal creature with antlers or a deer skull for a head. It has an insatiable hunger for human flesh. The more it eats, the larger it grows, but it's never satisfied. Always hungry, always hunting. In indigenous tradition, the Wendigo wasn't entertainment. It was a warning. A taboo, something you did not speak about lightly. And here's where it gets real. Wendigo psychosis was an actual documented medical condition. Anthropologists recorded multiple cases in the early 1900s. Symptoms included intense cravings for human flesh, extreme paranoia, anxiety, and the overwhelming belief that you were transforming into a Wendigo. Complete psychological breakdown. The most famous case is Swift Runner in 1879. He was a Cree trapper who killed and ate his entire family during a particularly harsh winter. His defense in court was literally "a Wendigo possessed me." The jury was not convinced. He was executed, but the case was thoroughly documented. Multiple other cases were recorded by anthropologists, almost always during extreme winters when isolation and starvation pushed people past breaking points. Modern understanding suggests it was a combination of factors: extreme isolation, severe starvation with vitamin deficiencies, hypothermia-induced psychosis, and the cultural framework for understanding that kind of madness. When you're starving to death in minus 40-degree weather and slowly losing your mind, having a name for what's happening to you almost makes it worse. The diagnosis itself is controversial now. Some researchers argue it pathologizes indigenous beliefs. Others say it was a real psychological phenomenon shaped by extreme environmental conditions. Either way, people genuinely experienced this. Courts documented it. Anthropologists studied it. The Wendigo wasn't just a scary story around the campfire. It was an explanation for something that actually happened to people. Starvation and isolation created the Wendigo. But the next creature's origin story, it's based on one specific woman whose tragedy was so enormous, it turned into a legend that spans an entire continent. La Llorona, the Weeping Woman, appears across Latin America, and the story is always the same. A woman in white appears near rivers, lakes, or canals, weeping and wailing for her lost children. Ay, mis hijos. Oh, my children. If you get too close, she'll try to drown you, mistaking you for one of her own kids. Or in some versions, she's just taking revenge on anyone she can find. The legend goes like this. A beautiful woman, often named Maria, fell in love with a wealthy man. They had children together. He eventually left her for someone of his own social class. In a fit of rage and grief, she drowned her own children in the river. Immediately realized what she had done, and either drowned herself or died of grief. Now she's cursed to search for her children forever. It's a genuinely tragic story. And here's the thing, it's probably based on a real person. La Malinche, also called Doña Marina, lived in the 1500s Mexico. She was an indigenous woman who became the translator for Hernán Cortés during the Spanish conquest. She had a son with Cortés. He eventually abandoned them both to marry a Spanish woman of proper nobility because, you know, conquistadors. Her son disappeared from historical records, just gone. And she was blamed by indigenous people as a traitor who helped destroy their civilization. It's the perfect storm for a legend. A real woman, a real betrayal, a missing child, and an entire culture looking for someone to blame for their trauma. But there's another layer. During the colonial period, infanticide was documented frequently enough that it needed explanation. Mestizo children, mixed-race kids, faced brutal discrimination. Some mothers killed their children rather than watch them suffer. It's horrific, but it happened often enough that the story served as both warning and explanation. Plus, children drowning in rivers and canals was tragically common. Parents used La Llorona to keep kids away from dangerous water. Don't go near the river or La Llorona will get you. The story appears in Aztec mythology even before Spanish colonization as the goddess Quihuacoatl. Colonial records mention a woman matching the description. Multiple documented cases of infanticide. Real drowning deaths. The legend evolved from specific historical trauma into a continent-wide cautionary tale that parents still use today. Before we continue with 3 more creatures that get progressively darker, including headless horsemen with human spine whips and undead Vikings, I need to ask for your help. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the real history behind legends, hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps me keep researching these stories and separating the myths from the disturbing reality. Your support means I can keep making these videos. Okay, let's continue. Because the next creature was punishment for breaking an oath so serious, even death couldn't escape it. And the evidence suggests the Celts took that very literally. A mother's grief created La Llorona, but the next creature was created by breaking an oath so serious, even death couldn't escape the punishment. And the Celts took that very, very literally. The Dullahan comes from Irish folklore, and it is genuinely one of the most metal creatures in mythology. Picture this. A headless horseman riding a black horse or driving a horse-drawn carriage made from human bones. He carries his own head under his arm. And the head is alive. It talks. It looks around. The eyes dart back and forth, scanning for victims. The head also glows with a sickly phosphorescent light, which we'll get back to because that detail is actually explainable. Oh, and he uses a human spine as a whip, because apparently regular whips weren't dramatic enough. The Dullahan is a death omen. He doesn't kill you himself. He just shows up, calls out your name, and boom, you're marked for death. Someone in your family is about to die, and there's nothing you can do about it. The only thing that repels him is gold. So unless you're carrying around gold coins, you're out of luck. Very practical defense system, Ireland. So where does this nightmare come from? 3 real historical practices, actually. First, the Celtic head cult. Ancient Celts genuinely practiced headhunting. They believed the head contained the soul, so they preserved enemy heads as trophies. Archaeological evidence is everywhere. Skulls have been found at Celtic sites across Europe, often with evidence of ritual significance. Second, Crom Cruach, an ancient Celtic deity that possibly required human sacrifice. Historical records mention headless bodies found at ritual sites. The Dullahan might be the memory of sacrificial victims or the priests who performed the executions. Third, Gauntsean warriors, which translates to without head. Some Celtic warriors took oaths so serious that breaking them meant execution by beheading. Their bodies were displayed as warnings. Legend says they continued riding even after death to fulfill their duty. Now, that phosphorescent glow, that's real too. Decaying organic matter produces bioluminescence. Bodies decomposing in bogs create glowing marsh gas. Combined with the mist and darkness, you've got your glowing head. Here's my favorite part. Washington Irving visited Ireland in the early 1800s, heard about the Dullahan, and just took it. Changed the name to Headless Horseman, set it in New York, wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow in 1820, and made it world famous. Literary theft on a cultural scale. The Dullahan was punishment for broken oaths and possibly human sacrifice. But what happens when you break nature's rules instead? Japan has an answer, and it involves spiders, hermit women, and men who really should have known better. Jorogumo translates to binding bride or whore spider, and Japanese folklore has very specific ideas about what happens when spiders get old enough. According to legend, when a spider reaches 400 years old, it gains the ability to shapeshift into a beautiful woman. She appears near waterfalls, in caves, or deep in forests, often playing a biwa, which is a traditional Japanese lute. A man hears the music, sees this stunning woman, approaches her, and that's when things go sideways. She lures him to her lair, binds him in silk threads, and devours him over the course of several days. In some versions, she can control fire. In others, spider legs emerge from her back when she reveals her true form. But by then, it's too late. Here's the real-world explanation, and it's actually a combination of two things. First, the Joro spider, scientifically named Nephila clavata. These are large orb weaver spiders found throughout Japan. The females are much larger than the males and have this striking golden yellow coloring that's almost beautiful in the right light. They build absolutely massive webs, sometimes over 3 feet across, strong enough to trap small birds. And here's the key detail. The females eat the males after mating. Sexual cannibalism. Documented. Repeatedly. So imagine you're in medieval Japan, walking through an old forest, and you walk face first into a giant golden web with a huge spider at the center that's in the process of eating its mate. In the darkness, with limited understanding of species, that's nightmare fuel. But there's a human element too. Historical records from the Edo period document Yama-uba, which means mountain women. These were women who fled to the mountains to escape abuse, poverty, or arranged marriages. They lived as hermits in caves and forests, often near spider-heavy areas because, well, that's where the good caves were. Some of these women became feral over time, and when local men went looking for them, some of those men disappeared. Whether they fell to their deaths at waterfalls, were killed in self-defense, or died from exposure, the result was the same. Dead men, isolated women, giant spiders. The legend writes itself. The specific waterfall in Joran Falls is known for disappearances. Slippery rocks, strong currents, men looking for beautiful women bathing. Easy to say the spider woman got them, when the alternative is admitting your husband fell off a cliff being an idiot. Our final creature makes all of this look tame, because Vikings were so terrified of their dead rising from graves that they invented elaborate methods to keep them down. And archaeologists keep finding the evidence. Hundreds of bodies, all treated the same way. The Draugr comes from Norse mythology, and Vikings were absolutely terrified of them. These weren't mindless zombies. Draugr were undead warriors who retained their intelligence, their combat skills, and their memories. They could speak, use weapons, and employ tactics. Some could shapeshift or grow to enormous size. They guarded treasure in burial mounds and would kill anyone who disturbed them. They could drive people insane just by looking at them. They spread disease and plague wherever they went. And they appeared in dreams before attacking, which is somehow worse. Now here's where this gets real. Archaeologists have found hundreds of what they call deviant burials across Scandinavia. And the methods are remarkably consistent. Bodies staked through the chest, large rocks placed on the torso, heads removed and positioned at the feet, limbs severed and repositioned, bodies buried face down, some bound with iron chains. This isn't isolated. This is everywhere. Specific examples. In Firkat, Denmark, they found a body that was decapitated, with the head placed between the legs and a stake driven through where the heart would be. Dated to the 10th century. In Iceland, multiple burial sites show bodies with stones placed in their mouths. The theory is it prevents them from biting their way out or shouting curses. Swedish graves have been found with sharpened stakes positioned to pin bodies to the ground. Not just one stake, multiple stakes. They were really committed to keeping these people down. So why did they do this? 3 real explanations. First, disease. Bodies that didn't decompose normally due to cold climate and certain soil conditions looked fresh when graves were accidentally opened. Bloating from decomposition made them look like they'd grown larger. Blood pooling in the mouth looked like they'd been drinking blood. Second, people were occasionally buried alive. Catalepsy is a real condition that mimics death. Some people woke up in their graves, tried to escape, and moved their bodies into different positions. Scratch marks have been found inside coffins. That would absolutely create terror about the undead. Third, social control. Cruel people, Troublemakers, or those who died in disgrace, were given these burials as extra insurance. If you were a horrible person in life, the community took precautions. And here's the thing, plague victims were often treated this way too. The fear that disease could spread from graves was based on genuine concern. Bodies were vectors for infection. The Norse sagas that describe Draugr also describe these exact burial practices. The stories weren't just fantasy, they were records of what people actually did when they were genuinely terrified of the dead coming back. We found the bodies, hundreds of them. Stakes, stones, decapitation, the works. The Vikings weren't being superstitious. They were taking every precaution they could think of. And honestly, finding all this archaeological evidence makes it even creepier. 6 legends, 6 cultures, and every single one rooted in something real. Glowing bacteria and disease created floating heads. Starvation-induced psychosis became cannibalistic spirits. Colonial tragedy turned into a weeping ghost. Celtic rituals left headless warriors. Spider cannibalism and mountain hermits merged into monster women. And Vikings staked down their dead so thoroughly that we're still finding the bodies. These weren't just campfire stories, they were explanations for phenomena people couldn't understand yet. Which origin surprised you most? Let me know in the comments. Your ancestors created these legends for a reason. They were trying to make sense of their world. Subscribe for more mythology decoded. Sweet dreams.